Okay, so does anyone have anything they'd like to share this morning or comment on or ask any questions?
Yes, I would like to share some things.
Yes.
So I know in our system, we consider that the inner fire is actually also like the divine fire. And that was really helpful today because I was really tired and it's like I was feeling really fatigued and it's like wasn't really kicking in. And I remembered that and um, I felt like it shifted over and I feel like I could just rest in it. And it felt like it was just like really God's fire. And it felt like it just like burned on its own. And I could see that I'd been trying to use effort. And it just felt really restful and restorative and healing. And then also I realized that I had been uh, looking at it from how do I want to breathe, like to kind of nourish or stoke the fire. But I realized, okay, how does God want to breathe to like nourish it? And it felt like it was a totally different experience. And it felt like it was more like nourished from the heavens and just, it's really different. And then I had an experience with it where in inner fire texts I've read, they talk about like the canopy of fire. And I've kind of connected with that feeling and had an experience like that, but it's been more like, felt like more like it's something I have to do. And it felt like as I was resting in it, I felt like I was kind of being held in a canopy of fire. And it felt different from the experience of just being surrounded by fire. It felt more like a personal experience, like a relational experience with the divine. And it was just, yeah, it felt really different. So I just really, it's really grateful for that view of our system and to not have to just look at it as my own thing. So that was the main thing I wanted to share. And then just also really quick, you've been having us do a thing. You had us in the partner practice for the application, like feeling the chi go ahead of us. And what I found really interesting today was what I realized is I was like the opponent was moving, and then once they would start moving, I would have the chi go, and I found that was already too late. Like I had to actually, my chi already had to be there when they started moving. Otherwise, I was like a beat behind. And it just gave me a different understanding of when it says, when the opponent doesn't move, I don't move. But when they move, I'm already there. So that was really helpful. And I was really grateful for having, that prompt or that direction. So I just wanted to share those things.
Oh, thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
I was like, oh, this is some great experiences. It's kind of interesting because to me, these experiences, a canopy of fire. And so a canopy of fire, or another way to say is you could call it actually divine fire. But then if it's divine fire, then it means it's actually everywhere because divinity is everywhere. If we really believe that there's divinity, then how could there be a place where, divinity is absent? Where in the universe, where in, if you will, God's creation, would the divine fire be lacking? And so the canopy of fire is actually being able to dial into the fire that's actually already there. It's just being able to notice the fire that's already there. And in a lot of the things that you get to notice is that being able to have access to something that you didn't have before. And it's kind of like, oh, well, if there's a fire, how come I don't notice it? It must be pretty weak. And it's actually, it's not, how should I say, a good way of looking at it. But it makes sense from an experiential perspective. What's probably a better way to look at it is that It's not that it's not powerful, it's actually very, very powerful, but the experience is diffused because our mind is divided. You know, you can be actually having the most powerful thing could be going on, but if you're distracted, then you can't actually experience it. A good example here is this. Let's say, for instance, you're having an argument with someone, you're fighting, and then all of a sudden there's a doorbell ring. You know, it's kind of interesting. It could be really bad argument, but most people actually just straighten up and actually like walk to the door as if it's nothing, and then actually answer the doorbell as if it's nothing. And like we switched. So it's actually, that is an example of what's called transformation. Instantaneous transformation is possible by just actually shifting your attention. But let's say, for instance, you just found out that you won the Mega Million lottery, and you didn't know about it. Like you know, a friend of, you didn't even buy the ticket. A friend of yours bought the ticket for you, and then you won it. And then now all of a sudden, you know, you're a multimillionaire, and then you will feel an abundance of joy. It's kind of interesting because that joy was in you already. You just dialed into it because now you feel like you found a reason for it. But it's not like all of a sudden something happened that wasn't there. It's not like all of a sudden the lottery ticket gave you a chemical injection into your brain and made you feel all that joy, right? It's not like that, actually. The joy was already there. You just dialed into it because you feel like you found a reason to dial into it. But it was just waiting to be accessed. But we didn't notice it was there, or we weren't dialing into it because that was not where our focus was. And so now you're feeling all that joy, you know, like, you know, without abandon. But let's say, for instance, in you get the call, and you get that experience, and then you are like overwhelmed with joy, and then you get a phone call, and then all of a sudden you get the news that the person you love the most died in a car accident. Can you see how the experiences, it doesn't, like the powerful experiences could be there, but depending on what you focus on, your experience will be vastly different. It's really where we place our attention. So the inner fire, or the divine fire that is everywhere, actually, we believe it to be the very thing that actually is the actually very source of life. Must be very powerful if it's the very source of life. You know, it's like, it's what gives divine light. And being able to dial into that which animates all things, that which, you know, gives energy. And if you're able to successfully dial into it, as if you won the lottery, you know, if you find it, and that's actually the experience. Like if you practice things like inner fire, at some point you really dial into it, and then you just really experience the fire like you're starting to experience it. And now, you know, at first, a lot of us actually just experience it by learning how to control certain aspects that you didn't know you could control. But then you start realizing, oh, hang on a second, I don't need to actually control anything. Because see, if you try and experience inner fire all day long, in every moment of your life, you know, because that's the experience that you will like, then you can't be controlling something, because that's tiring. You know, it's like, if I give an example, you know, after you exercise, actually what people really appreciate after they exercise is feeling relaxed. And ironically, engaging your body can be a very effective way to relax. Like after you really exert your body, your body tends to let go. But if you exercise all day long, well, you can't stay relaxed. I mean, that's an ineffective way of relaxing. And so doing something to kickstart the body so you can relax is good. But what if you actually can learn how to just let go and relax? Then you can have moments where you relax to kind of recalibrate and make sure that you can relax and let go further. But if you learn how to relax, then you can maintain the moments of exercise that gives you a more profound sense of relaxation. And then you can actually just maintain and deepen that and continue that and treasure that. And so if you look at these practices from this perspective, then what you find out is that what you're trying to do is you're trying to find the lottery ticket that's already there, that actually never leaves. And that's the concept of divine fire and the canopy of fire. And that's why, it's also called divine bliss. And it's very interesting because this idea, and the reason they give it such great names, divine, it's because we pay attention to that which we think is valuable, which we think is important. And all of us actually have a sense of wonder for mystery and life and the absolute principles that govern life. It's just an innate thing. We call it reality and inner fire or divine fire or divine bliss. We name it that, we give the name divine to actually help us name the experience that we find most important and valuable, so that we can actually prioritize it and actually allow ourselves to kind of just dial into it and rest in it. And so just kind of wanted to just give that context in regards to divine fire, divine bliss, where, instead of focusing on your pain in the physical body, you actually start focusing on what feels good. You focus on what actually gives you life. You focus on what gives you bliss or the experience of satisfaction, passion, and happiness and wholeness. And so I just kind of wanted to just contrast that and actually just kind of expound upon the experience that you were talking about, so that you can dial into it even more. Remembering that, it's because it's like really feels like there's nothing, and all of a sudden there's something. And it feels like it's difficult to focus on nothing, but actually the things that make us happy, when they came out of nothing too. And so we're just getting better at dialing into the nothing that gives us happiness that's always been there. We're just getting better at giving ourselves a reason to just unreasonably be happy, instead of actually having to find something physical, having to find something that's concrete that only happens once in a while, which actually is out of our control, right? Like winning the lottery tickets, we can have the experience of winning the lottery ticket all the time because that's within us. But the actual event for you to have the lottery ticket winning happen, that event, that's more difficult to reproduce. So anyways, I just kind of wanted to talk about that from a perspective of just like the experience of winning the lottery ticket came out of nothing, but that experience actually always existed. And the only thing that actually prevented us from actually being able to dial into it was our reason. And that we're learning how to give ourselves better reason, where we are basically dialing into the constant lotto ticket of the universe for the experience of bliss. And that we call it divine fire and divine bliss. That's a very useful concept. That way we can overcome the difficulty of, wow, it seems so subtle, or it seems like difficult to dial in, but actually it's always there.
Thank you so much. That was indescribably awesome and perfect. And I feel like it's really kind of amazes me how we limit, like how we limit our experience of it. And I feel like every time I think I've found a greater version, then there's an even greater version, and then even
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
I was
Totally.
and so I feel like that was really helpful, because what you said, helped me realize that I still had a limitation on it, that it's like it's something like within me or specific to me, not the very basis of all things and pervading all things and the nature of all things. And so that recognition is makes such a difference.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, it's, if we're like really think about it, what we're doing is we're becoming better at, it's kind of like, it's like we're, we don't realize that in how much poverty mentality we're stuck, where something external needs to happen, when instead of realizing that, oh, actually we can practice having a lottery experience all the time, where we get better and better at having the lottery experience. And because we don't think that's possible, we have so many reasons. Well, it's not a real lottery ticket, but it's one of the reasons why in all the traditions, in the spiritual traditions, realization or revelation is actually prized so much, because when you do these practices, when you do gratitude practice, or when you do these kind of inner fire practice, or divine fire practice, or divine bliss practice, or inner bliss practice, whatever you want to call it, when you do these practices, it increases the chances of either what you call realization or revelation. Revelation has a connotation of something being revealed. Realization actually has the same connotation, but it's slightly different. But they're of similar nature. But basically, they're inspirational insights that we have about reality. And whenever you get one, it feels like it feeds you, and it nourishes your entire day. You get to have an entire day of inspiration. And when you hit one of those inspirations, it feels like you won the lottery ticket, because you feel like you have claimed life itself, because that's what the experience of an inspiration is like. And what people don't realize is that when you have these practices, that it's actually becomes more and more stable, where you start having these realizations consistently when you're doing your practices, to the point where these realizations keep coming. And so, that's why I jokingly call, I was calling it the lottery ticket experience, because, as when you have one of these experiences, it feels like you won the lottery ticket. It's like it feels like you
Totally.
won the lottery ticket of life.
Totally.
So, okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, very good. Okay, I am here pretty much done. Does anyone have any other quick questions or comments or sharing that they'd like to make before we call for today?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, great, please.
Yeah, one, I just want to really, I really appreciate what you just shared, and the sharing from Pastor as well. I had a similar kind of well, it really connected to what you're saying is, you know, and you were teaching at the beginning about the chakras being open and the central column, and that if that happens, the emotions will release. And so I woke up with having some, well, one, physically not feeling great, and then emotionally also feeling a little congested. And so I was just kind of playing with it through the goal series, and that was really helpful because I realized if I pushed my chest out and kind of like looked for the happiness, it was really interesting. I could tell there's a part of me that preferred the negative emotions and thought that they were actually going to get me a better experience. And so, you know, I got to explore that. I was like, oh, this is a familiar pain that I actually have good associations with. And I was like, why? And so I got to see all my attachments to that, such as like a belief that people would leave me alone and I could get to rest a little bit more if I didn't look so hot. Or, you know, like, and I was like, wow, is that really the case? You know, is that going to be effective? And I was like, no. And I was like, kind of can see like the part of me that's leveraging against myself so I can get myself to feel better. And it was just interesting how much of attention was going to the sensations that ultimately I didn't want. I did want the happiness, but it was like where my awareness was. And so like what you just said about the divine fire and putting attention there, I feel like it's really useful just to keep doing that under different circumstances and seeing that it is possible to put your attention somewhere else, and the habitual ways of working the attention, they don't have legs to stand on in the end, you know. But getting there, I'm still not quite sure like all the needs that were being met by the negative emotions or something, but it feels like 95% resolved. And so I just wanted to share that experience. And
Wow.
yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing. That was beautiful.
Of course.
Yeah. Actually, I have no comment on what you said. I was sort of just saying that I feel like what you're saying is actually just really spot on. I feel like it was just a beautiful sharing of something that's just really actually very true. You know, it's what you said. Like the only reason we focus on that is because we think it's actually what's going to ironically bring us happiness.
Yeah, it was kind of embarrassing to realize that. I was like, I prefer this. Why the heck would I prefer this? I'm not supposed to prefer this, but I do. You know?
Yes, right.
And then it's like, well, do I really prefer that? Well, no.
Yes.
It's just interesting.
Yeah. And that's actually what I always talk about is that the difference between confusing strategy with an actual need. And, you know, thinking that this strategy is going to meet our needs better because it has had proven. It's a beautiful book that was written. Oh, geez, what was it called? Oh, I forget what it. Oh, geez, the existence crisis. No, it's oh, I forget the name of the book. But this author, this lady, writes about how. The existential kink. I think it's called. I think it's called existential kink, and she actually writes about how we sabotage ourselves because we love sabotaging ourselves. And I think that's actually a great book on that subject, and just to bring awareness to it. So,
the existential kink. Okay.
Yes, it's a great book. It's a great book. It talks about how we just love sabotaging ourselves because we think it's going to bring us benefit. So, okay. Now, well, thank you for sharing that. Now, with that, I got a scooch, and so I'm going to wish you all just a great day of dialing into divine bliss and divine fire. enjoy being in the canopy of divine fire.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Master Tim. Thank you,
Welcome.
Shifu and Samo.